As the prop turns, the racers are the show. By racers, for the fans who want to understand. If you're a fan of offshore racing, you have probably heard racers talking about the IHRA, OPA, RWO, APBA, memberships, entry fees, equipment fees, tow money, purses, boat counts, and politics. From the outside, it probably sounds like drama. Probably sounds like racers arguing over sanctioning bodies. It probably sounds like everyone should just pick a race and go run their boats. But from the inside the pits, it's a lot deeper than that. It's not just about politics. It's not just about tow money. It's about time. It's about trust. And it is about value. It is about whether racers can afford to keep showing up. Because the fans see the show, the racers see the invoice. Fans see the race boats. They see the helicopters. They see the flags. They see the sponsor banners. They see the race village. They see the boats flying across the water at triple-digit speeds. They see the podium pictures, the trophies. What fans do not always see is what it takes to get that boat there. They do not see the all-night shop thrashes. They do not see the engine bills. They do not see the prop repair invoices. They do not see the fuel receipts. They do not see the hotel bills. They do not see the membership fees. They do not see the equipment registration fees. They don't see the entry fees. They don't see the safety gear cost. They do not see the crew expenses, and they do not see the time off of work. They do not see the small businesses being put on hold so teams can chase a race weekend. That is the part racers live with every single event. It's a traveling circus. The sanctioned bodies are a lot like a traveling circus. They bring the big tent to town. The towns promote it. The sponsors support it. The local officials talk about the economic impact. The restaurants get busy. The hotels fill up. The marinas are packed. Everyone gets excited because the circus has arrived. But let's not forget who the attraction really is. The racers. The clowns. That's what I like to say. The racers are the performers under the tent. The racers are the ones hauling equipment across the country. The racers are the ones putting boats in the water. The racers are the ones taking the risk every time the green flag drops. Without the racers, there is no show. Without the boats, there are no fans lining the seawall. Without the teams, there is no economic impact. Without racers, there is nothing to sanction, nothing to promote, and nothing to watch. Everybody gets paid before the racer. Let's be honest. Everybody on offshore racing gets paid before the racer does. The city gets paid. The hotels get paid. The restaurants get paid. The fuel docks get paid. The marinas get paid. The insurance companies get paid. The sanctioning bodies get paid. The membership gets paid. The entry fees get paid. The crane gets paid. The dockage gets paid. The trailer parking gets paid. And if a racer clips a buoy, they pay for that too. The racer writes every check. The racer takes every risk. The racer brings the crew. The racer fills the hotel rooms. The racer fuels the boats. The racer creates the content. The racer creates the excitement. The racer creates the show. So the question racers are beginning to ask is simple. When does the racer get paid? Not because racers are trying to get rich, because racers are trying to survive. The cost starts before the green flag drops. The cost of racing does not start when the boat hits the water. It starts long before that. Before a racer ever takes the green flag, they have to be legal. They need impact jackets, helmets, harnesses, emergency air systems, fire suppression systems, communication systems, medical certifications, their memberships, the equipment registrations, insurance policies, tech inspections, and none of it's optional. A proper offshore impact jacket can cost hundreds of dollars per racer. A certified helmet can cost hundreds of dollars also. Canopy teams need emergency air systems. Those are very expensive. Harnesses must be current. Fire systems must be legal. Boats have to pass tech. Crews have to meet the rules. For many teams, thousands of dollars are spent before the boat ever touches the water. Then comes race weekend. Fuel, tow vehicle fuel, hotels, food, crew expenses, gear oil, fluids, dockage, parking, entry fees. And that is assuming nothing breaks. Absolutely nothing. No blown engine, no broken drive, no damaged propeller, no steering failures, no electrical issues, no crash damage. Just a normal race weekend. That is why racers talk about payouts, because the bill is real. The risk is real, the commitment is real. So the return should be real too. Every organization charges fees. That is not the argument. RWO charges fees. APBA charges fees. OPA charges fees. IHRA charges fees. That's not the question. Nobody is racing for free. The real question is this: what does the racer get back? RWO requires annual membership fees and racing entry fees, with premium pricing for Key West. OPA requires annual hull and equipment fees, and event entry fees, and a membership fee. IHRA requires membership and entry fees as well, but its current model includes tow money and purse payout, designed to put money back into the teams that show up and compete. That's the difference racers are talking about. It's not one organization charges money and the other one's not. They all charge money. The question is whether the money only flows out of the racer's pocket or whether some of it comes back to help the teams keep racing. Because when racers are paying memberships, equipment fees, entry fees, safety gear, insurance, fuel, hotel, food, crew expenses, and time away from work, the return matters. A title matters. A trophy matters. History matters. But racers cannot pay bills with prestige. There is no question that Key West remains one of the most prestigious races in offshore racing history. The history is unmatched. The legends are real. The title carries weight. Every racer understands what a Key West World Championship means. But Key West has become financially unrealistic for a lot of teams. Not just expensive, unrealistic. A week of rentals, a week of hotels, a week of feeding a crew, a week away from work, a week of transportation, fuel, dockage, entry fees, and everything else that comes with taking a race team to the Keys. For teams without unlimited budgets, that is not just a race weekend. That is a season-changing moment. Nobody is questioning the prestige. Nobody is saying Key West does not matter. It absolutely matters. But racers are being forced to ask whether the average team can still afford to chase it. Because a World Championship trophy is priceless. But the journey to get there certainly is not. And if the return is mostly a trophy, a photo, and bragging rights, racers are going to ask whether that math still works. And that does not mean Key West does not matter. It means racers are being forced to choose between prestige and survival. History alone is not enough. The OPA has history. Nobody can take that away. They have hosted great races. They have built relationships that go back decades. They have been a part of offshore racing world for a long time. But history alone is not enough anymore. Racers today are evaluating value. How many races are available? How much does participation cost? What does the schedule actually look like? Are the boat counts strong? Can sponsors get value? Can racers count on stability? At some point, the racers have to ask what they are really paying for. A couple of scattered races, light boat counts, and a trophy at the end of the day is not enough to build a serious season. That is not a championship chase. That is a weekend racing with a membership fee. Racers are not spending thousands of dollars on equipment, registrations, entries, fuel, hotels, crew, and travel just to show up to a thin field and call it progress. They want competition. They want momentum. They want a schedule worth selling to sponsors. They want boat counts that make the win mean something. Because if racers are paying national level cost, they should be getting national level value. Many racers were excited when the RWO and IHRA appeared to be working together. For the first time in a long time, it felt like offshore racing might be moving toward unity instead of division. Bigger boat counts, more competition, more excitement, more value for racers, more value for sponsors, more reason for fans to show up. Then it ended. The explanation racers heard was that the organizations did not share the same vision. Maybe that is true, maybe it is not. But racers are tired of hearing that from every direction. Because every time organizations separate, racers are the ones who adjust. Sponsors have to be updated, schedules have to be changed, budgets have to be rebuilt, travel plans have to be rewritten. The St. Clair situation became a perfect example. Many racers were excited about what a united event could have looked like. Instead, the sport moved in a different direction again. And once again, the racers were left holding the bill. Racers are tired of buying into promises of change. They are tired of memberships, equipment fees, entry fees, and schedules that turn into moving targets. They want consistency. They want commitment. They want a season worth investing in. St. Clair will show the effects. St. Clair may have ended up being one of the clearest examples of what happens when the sport splits directions. For years, St. Clair has been one of those events racers respected. A great town, a great race site, a strong offshore history, a place people wanted to go. But this year, many racers are watching the boat count closely. Because when racers thought IHRA and the OPA were working together, St. Clair looked like it had the potential to be something bigger, a united event, stronger fields, more competition, more value for sponsors, more excitement for fans, more reason for racers to spend the money and make the trip. Then the organizations separated. And once again, racers had to decide where their money, time, and equipment were going. That decision will show up somewhere. Maybe it shows up in the pits. Maybe it shows up in the classes. Maybe it shows up in the boat count as a whole. But it will show up. Because racers do not have unlimited budgets. They cannot chase every organization. They cannot buy every membership. They cannot pay every equipment fee. They cannot hold every race. At some point, teams have to choose the events that make sense for their program. And when organizations split the schedule, the boat count usually pays the price. That is not good for the racers. That is not good for the sponsors. That is not good for the fans. And it is not good for towns like St. Clair that deserve a strong offshore show. That is exactly why racers are frustrated. Because when the sport divides, everyone feels it, but the racer feels it first. Then there's the APBA, the organization holding the traditional recognition card. The APBA has history. The APBA has legitimacy. The APBA has recognition. But racers are asking a fair question. What does that recognition do for the teams writing the checks? Recognition does not pay the diesel bills. It does not pay for the hotel rooms. It does not cover the equipment fees. It does not rebuild the engines. It does not replace broken props. And it does not pay for safety equipment. Recognition does not cover a week away from work. A sanctioning stamp means nothing. But it does not mean everything. Because from the cockpit, the only thing that feels official is the bill. The membership is official. The equipment fee is official. The entry fee is official. The hotel bills are official. The fuel bills are official. The time away from work is official. So if the costs are official, the support for racers should be official too. The sport says it wants to grow. The sport says it wants new racers. The sport says it wants bigger fields. Then when someone brings a different model to the table, suddenly the conversation becomes about who is official. Racers are tired of that game. Credibility should not just be about a logo. Credibility should be about what is being done for the people who make the race happen. The IHRA is changing the conversation. Love them or hate them, the IHRA changed that conversation. Instead of only talking about prestige, instead of only talking about history, instead of only talking about recognition, they started talking about money. Toll money, purses, direct payouts, and financial support. For decades, offshore racing worked like this: race hard, win a trophy, go home broke. The IHRA challenged that idea, and whether people like it or not, racers noticed. Because racers understand numbers. They understand fuel costs. They understand hotel bills. They understand what it costs to build and maintain a race boat. They understand what it costs to drag a crew across the country. They understand that getting some of that money back matters. Not because racers are greedy, because racers are realistic. And who's actually putting the races on? This is where the conversation gets real. Racers are done racing press releases. They are done racing promises. They are done racing visions. They want actual races, actual boat counts, actual payouts, actual support, because the bills are actual too. The fuel bill's real, and the hotel bill's real, and the entry fee's real. The time away from work is real. The cost of housing a crew is real. So when an organization puts races on the water and pays racers, racers notice. When another organization offers prestige but prices the average team out of the week, racers notice that too. Right now, the IHRA has gotten attention because racers have seen races happen, and then the money go back to the teams. That matters, because talk is cheap. Diesel is not. Hotels are not, and engines are not. Cruise expenses are not, and if an organization wants racers to support it, there has to be value coming back to the teams. Prestige matters. History matters. Recognition matters. But right now, racers are watching who is actually helping them stay in the sport. Races held, boats on the water, money paid, value returned. Because racers cannot race press releases. They race boats. And then racers hear the line. Nobody likes the offshore guys. Maybe that should make everyone stop and ask why. Because maybe the problem is not just the offshore racers. Maybe the problem is years of racers being treated like walking invoices. Maybe the problem is racers being asked to pay memberships, equipment fees, entry fees, insurance, travel, hotels, fuel, crew expenses, and fines, then being told to be grateful for a trophy. Maybe the problem is teams being used to promote economic impact while receiving very little of that impact back. Maybe the problem is changing schedules, changing partnerships, changing rules and expectations, and racers being expected to absorb the cost every time someone else changes direction. Maybe the problem is that offshore racers have been conditioned to fight for themselves, because too many times, nobody else did. Are offshore racers outspoken? Absolutely. Are they passionate? Without a question. Are they difficult sometimes? Probably. But when people are spending their own money, risking their own equipment and lives, taking time away from work, hauling crews across the country and putting on the show everyone else profits from, they're going to have opinions, strong ones. So instead of saying nobody likes the offshore guys, maybe the better question is, why are offshore racers so frustrated in the pits? Because racers do not get loud when things are working. They get loud when they feel ignored. And if the sport truly wants unity, growth, bigger boat counts, maybe it's time to stop blaming the racers for speaking up and start listening to what they have been saying for years. Sometimes fans hear racers talk about money and think they're complaining. Most are not. Most racers know they're not getting rich racing offshore. That is not the point. The point is sustainability. Can they afford the next race? Can they afford the next season? Can they keep sponsors interested? Can they bring new people into the sport? Can they keep boat counts strong? Can they keep the show alive? That is the conversation. Not greed, survival. A payout might cover fuel. Tow money might help cover the haul. Prize money might cover the hotel bill. It might help a team make the next race instead of sitting at home. That is the difference between a sport growing and a sport shrinking. The real question is this. For years, Racers have heard how much money offshore racing brings into host communities. The hotels fill up, the restaurants fill up, the marinas fill up, the fuel docks get busy, local businesses benefit. City leaders proudly talk about economic impact. And they're right. Race weekends create revenue. But racers are asking a fair question. If we are creating the attraction that generates all that revenue, should some of that value come back to the racers? Not because anyone wants a handout, because racers are the product. The racers are the show. The racers are the reason people line the seawall. The racers are the reason sponsors buy banners. The racers are the reason towns host events. Without racers, there is no race weekend. Without racers, there is no economic impact. Without racers, there is no circus. What happens next? Maybe the biggest question is not about IHRA. Maybe it is not about OPA or the APBA or even about RWO. Maybe it's about the future of offshore racing itself. How do we keep boat counts strong? How do we attract new owners? How do we bring young drivers and thrallmen into the sport? How do we make sure family-funded teams survive? How do we make sure offshore racing does not become something only a handful of wealthy teams can afford? Because if the racers disappear, everything else disappears with them. The sponsors, the sanctioning bodies, the prestige, the championships, the fans, all of it. The sport keeps saying it wants racers, then it prices them out. The sport keeps saying it wants boat counts, then it makes teams choose between organizations, membership fees, and schedules. The sport keeps saying it wants growth. Then the average racer looks at the cost of travel, safety gear, entry fees, lodging, crew expenses, and the cost of missing work and then realizes the dream is getting further away. That is not how you grow a sport. That is how you shrink it. If offshore racing wants more racers, it has to start making sense for racers, not just for cities, not just for the hotels, not just for the sponsors, not just for the organizations, for the racers. Because without them, there is no race. As the prop turns, question of the week. As a fan or racer, what matters most to you? Bigger purses? Tow money? More races? Bigger boat counts? Prestigious championships? Stability and consistency? Better coverage and exposure? Please tell us what you think, because this sport was not built by sanctioning bodies. It was built by racers, and that's as the prop turns.